The sun gleamed over the U.S. Air Force Academy's grand courtyard, where rows of crisp uniforms shimmered like silver waves. Graduation day had arrived. Among the cadets stood Aurora Steele, a 20-year-old with deep blue eyes, a steady gaze, and a past shaped by silent battles. Her story wasn't one of privilege or legacy, but of resilience, survival, and the memory of a father lost in combat when she was just 5. President Donald Trump, attending the ceremony as Commander-in-Chief, prepared to award her the Medal of Leadership Excellence, the highest honor given to a cadet who exemplifies both skill and service. Cameras lined the perimeter, families clapped, and Aurora's mother, a school janitor who raised her alone, stood near the back, holding her breath. As Trump called Aurora forward, the crowd erupted in cheers. She stepped up, saluted firmly, and looked the president in the eye. But just as he extended the medal, Aurora did something no one expected. "I'm honored, sir," she said clearly, her voice unwavering, "but I must respectfully decline." The courtyard fell silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Trump's hand froze mid-air. "Why?" he asked, more curious than offended. Aurora took a breath. "Because I want to ask for something else instead. Not for me, but for others who serve quietly, without recognition." Gasps rippled through the crowd as cameras zoomed in. Her refusal wasn't out of disrespect. It was a stand for something greater. Trump didn't speak, but motioned for her to continue. And in that still moment, with the nation watching, a movement began, sparked, not by medals, but by meaning. Standing tall at the podium, Aurora spoke with calm conviction. "Mr. President, instead of this medal, I ask that the funds, or recognition behind it, be used to build better mental health support systems for our veterans and cadets." The crowd gasped again. Trump tilted his head slightly, visibly intrigued. "Too many of my fellow cadets suffer in silence," she continued. "And I've seen my mother cry alone every night, trying to stay strong after losing my father in Afghanistan. He didn't get help when he came back the first time, and he didn't survive the second." Her voice cracked slightly, but she held firm. The silence in the courtyard was deafening. Deeply moved, Trump stepped back and gestured for the crowd to applaud. And they did, not just for Aurora's excellence in service, but for her courage to speak truth on one of the biggest stages of her life. That night, the clip went viral. "Cadet refuses medal from Trump" trended globally. But it wasn't the refusal that resonated, it was the reason behind it. By morning, Aurora Steele's name was on every major news outlet. Interview requests flooded the academy. But Aurora declined them all. "I didn't speak to become famous," she told her commanding officer. "I just wanted to make a difference." The next day, President Trump invited her to the White House, not to offer the medal again, but to listen. Inside the Oval Office, he asked, "Tell me more about what you're proposing." Aurora pulled out a folded list. "I surveyed 83 cadets, 49 reported mental strain. 16 admitted to suicidal thoughts, and 4 dropped out last year without explanation. We need therapists, not just drills. We need safe rooms, peer support, and someone to say, 'It's okay not to be okay.'" Trump nodded slowly. This could be something big. While Aurora met with leaders in Washington, her mother, Lena Steele, was back in Colorado Springs cleaning classrooms. She watched her daughter's speech on a teacher's phone during lunch break, tears falling silently as she wiped desks. "She's just like her father," Lena whispered. When Aurora returned home, she found her mother sitting quietly in the kitchen. "Are you proud?" she asked, uncertain. Lena looked up. "I'm proud, every day. But this is beyond anything I imagined." Aurora nodded. "I don't want medals for being brave. I want to make it easier for others to ask for help." Lena reached across the table and took her hand. "Then you'll need strength I never had. The world's listening now. Use it." And in that quiet moment, mother and daughter, both shaped by war and silence, became each other's strength. A week later, Aurora received her first letter, handwritten by Elliot Hartman, a 68-year-old retired Air Force sergeant from Kansas. Cadet Steele, it read, I watched your speech from my living room. For the first time in years, I cried. I've carried scars since Vietnam. No one ever asked how I felt. You did. Thank you. Aurora wept. Then came the second letter, the 10th, the 100th each, one carrying a story, a burden, a plea for change. That's when Aurora realized this wasn't just a message, it was a movement. With the Academy's support, she launched Operation Open Ears, a cadet-led mental health initiative focused on peer counseling, open forums, and trauma-informed training. At her first open forum, the room was packed. Cadets who had never spoken before finally shared their stories, and for the first time, they knew they were not alone. I failed 2 classes because I couldn't sleep. My dad came back from Iraq, but he never really came back. I thought I was the only one. That's what a fellow cadet confided in Aurora. She didn't have all the answers, but she listened, and that proved more powerful than any policy. Her initiative caught fire. Other military academies began reaching out, and even civilians launched online chapters. A movement had truly begun. 2 weeks later, President Trump held a press conference. I met a young woman who refused a medal, he began. Not out of pride, but purpose. Cadet Aurora Steele reminded us that valor isn't just shown in combats, it's shown in vulnerability. He then announced the Steele Act, a federal grant program funding mental health support across military training facilities and VA hospitals. Aurora watched from her dorm room, stunned, as the other cadets erupted in cheers. The message was clear. Her voice mattered, and so did everyone else's. Aurora had initially avoided interviews, fearing the media might twist her message, but when a combat veteran turned journalist Jaime Knox asked her to appear on his show, she agreed. Why now? He asked. Because it's not just about me anymore, she replied. It's about everyone who's ever sat in silence, afraid to be labeled weak. Jaime nodded. You said something powerful, that strength isn't loud. It listens, and it heals, Aurora added. The episode went viral. People weren't just inspired, they were finally talking. But not everyone supported her. One senior officer dismissed her movement as a distraction from discipline. Another accused her of weakening military resolve. Aurora was briefly crushed, but she remembered her father, the man who taught her that true courage often meant standing alone. She met privately with her critics. This isn't about softness, she explained. It's about sustainability. You can't fight a war if you've already lost the one inside. Slowly, even skeptics began to shift. The culture was changing painfully, but steadily. Weeks later, Aurora received a box from her late father's former unit. Inside was his old leather journal. One entry read, I watch my daughter sleep when I get home on leave. I wonder if she'll ever understand the wars I fight in silence. Clutching it to her chest, Aurora cried for the father she barely remembered, but now deeply understood. It gave her fuel. Her fight wasn't in vain. Back at the academy, her psychology professor pulled her aside. You've started something that may outlast all of us, he said. Would you consider turning this into a curriculum? Me? Aurora blinked. Why not? You're changing culture. Make it a course. Within weeks, she began drafting a peer mental health training module that would later become mandatory at multiple academies. Aurora was no longer just a cadet, she was an architect of change. Her message extended beyond military lines. A 16-year-old girl from Ohio wrote, I saw you stand tall in front of the president. If you can speak up, maybe I can too. I've been hiding my depression for years. A single father from Texas messaged, you reminded me to hug my son. More. To tell him it's okay to cry. Aurora realized something profound. The need to be heard wasn't military exclusive, it was human. Senator Maria Velazquez invited her to testify at a Senate committee hearing on veteran mental health reform. Standing before lawmakers, Aurora didn't speak with rehearsed professionalism. She spoke with lived truth. I'm not here as a soldier today, she said. I'm here as a daughter, a friend, someone who's seen what silence costs. After her testimony, 3 bipartisan bills gained immediate support. Aurora walked out not as a cadet, but as a catalyst. But even catalysts break. One night, overwhelmed by pressure and hate messages from online trolls, Aurora nearly gave up. Staring into the mirror, questioning everything, she felt the weight of it all. Then, her roommate, Cadet Jenna Ray, knocked softly. Want me to sit with you? Aurora nodded. They sat together in silence, no words, just presence. And in that moment, Aurora remembered, even leaders need others, even heroes need holding. That night deepened Aurora's conviction. No one should face darkness alone. When President Trump later invited her to a second ceremony, he didn't offer the same medal this time. He introduced the Aurora Steele Medal for Mental Resilience, an honor created to recognize those who champion emotional wellness in service. Aurora stood stunned, as Trump declared, "This medal will honor those who fight the invisible war and win." The crowd erupted, and though she accepted it, she did so not for herself, but for every unheard voice she represented. Soon, high schools, colleges, and even police academies began adopting the principles of open ears, and while requests poured in for her to speak, she declined many, insisting, "This doesn't need to be about me. I want to train others to lead." She founded the Open Ears Leadership Corps, empowering chapters nationwide to carry forward the movement, each echoing one truth: listen, speak, heal. Months later, a retired general approached her at an event, and, with tearful eyes, admitted he once dismissed her work, till his grandson told him that her words made him feel seen. "That changed everything," he said. "Thank you." Aurora smiled and replied, "Thank you for listening." At her final academy ceremony, Aurora delivered the graduating address, standing tall in uniform. "Courage isn't always found in the mission," she said. "Sometimes it's in the moment we choose to feel, to speak, and to stand for each other." Her closing salute wasn't to a flag, but to the people behind it, turning a standing ovation. Later, at her father's grave, Aurora gently laid the medal on his headstone. "I didn't take the first one for you," she whispered. "I took this one with you." A soft breeze stirred the leaves like a quiet response. And for the first time, Aurora didn't feel like a hero, just a daughter at peace. Years passed, and one day, a young cadet stood at the academy gates, holding a worn book. Story, now published, studied, remembered. She turned to her mother and asked, "Do you think I could be like her someday?" Her mother smiled and said, "If you lead with your heart, you already are, because movements don't end with medals or speeches. They live on in quiet choices," whispered courage, and the cadet who once said no, so others could say yes.